All right, what is up, everybody out there? Coach Mac, Play Fast. Wanted to be able to get on at least one more time. We start camp on Monday. So I know last year, I think, I'm trying to remember. I think last year during the season, I was able to get on a few times and talk to everybody about what we had going on, what everybody else had going on. Try to check in with people. It's a good way. I think YouTube Live is a good way to check in with people and see how their season's going, other than comments on videos. Not a lot of other ways people can check in. So be able to check in during the season and see how everybody else is doing, see what's going on in the football world outside of where I am. Always interesting to me, state by state or country by country. I know there's some people that jump on here that are from other countries and they're playing American football there. So, with every new year brings new adaptations, new adjustments. So it's going to be interesting to see when we start Monday. When we get into the season, it's going to be interesting to see what the new flavor of the month is in Florida high school football, what everybody's trying to do on offense to attack the things that we do, see if we have a couple wrinkles that we've been working on, to help us continue off of last year's success. A couple other front ideas, trying to play three high behind some other fronts to protect some of the things that we're doing. Tried to make our blitz game, our blitz families a little bit simpler. So we kick off Monday. I don't know what everybody else does when everybody else starts, but it's kind of that time of year that becomes a little bit surreal for everybody that's a teacher and a football coach. One of the downsides about being a football coach is your season is in the fall. So as much as you look forward to football starting, that means it's back to school. If you're an adjunct or somebody that doesn't teach for a living and you just coach, then you're probably completely ready for football to get cranked up. And don't get me wrong, I'm completely ready to get everything cranked up, but there's other things that come along with it. If it was just, football and football games and that's all we had to worry about, then it would be a completely beautiful scenario. But when you're talking about now having to go back to school and all the meetings and all the paperwork and everything else that you have to do, it kind of comes with the territory of being a high school coach. So, and then unfortunately for me, the golf world kind of gets put on the back burner for a little while, and it becomes football centric for the next couple months. So, I want to see what we're going to keep doing. Usually during the season, there's plenty of YouTube videos that come out. I have access to a classroom and I have all the things that we're working on and what we're changing, what we're not changing, practice plans and organization and how we're doing special teams. And so with the season always comes good content for the football side of, obviously everything we do with Play Fast. For me personally, it kind of puts some of the other things that I enjoy on the back burner, but such is life. That's the life we chose. And that's what we have to do. So, it is what it is. Football brings a lot of other opportunities, a lot of game film, a chance for me to do some other things on Patreon that I like doing, going drive by drive and taking people through what we are playing well, what we're struggling with, showing people what offenses are trying to do to us on defense, which is always interesting, how teams are trying to attack us on defense. So the football season comes with opportunities to do more things with film, opportunities for Patreon. So everything is kind of cyclical with the time of year and when I'm doing certain things and, when we're really cranked up with Play Fast football stuff and, when the YouTube stuff gets cranked up, the Patreon stuff gets a little bit more involved. The chat stuff quiets down a little bit, the Sunday night Twitter chat. I still try to do it throughout the season just to maintain some type of normalcy to kind of give you an outlet to on a Sunday night unwind a little bit and just ask some questions that other people answer. So, we still go after the Twitter scene with the Sunday night chat. So, it's that time of year again. I think if you're a football fan, you're probably ready for college football to start up. A lot of NFL camps have started. So, interesting time of year in Jacksonville. I think everybody is expecting some really big things from the Jaguars this year. So we'll see how everybody handles that. We'll see. Obviously, schedule is going to be a hell of a lot tougher. When you win, other things come with that when you win a division. So schedule is going to be a lot tougher. So it's going to be a tougher ask there, but definitely moving in the right direction. I think Florida college football should be pretty good this year. I think Florida State's probably the best of the bunch right now, but I think Florida's pretty close. Miami's trying to get it rolling again. So, we'll see what UCF and USF have in store. And, obviously there's FAMU and Bethune doing their thing. So college football in the state of Florida is pretty huge. So, exciting around here when that gets a chance to kick up again. So, we wrapped up our last 7-on-7 today. A little sloppy for a couple different reasons. Still this time of year, we have some kids taking visits and getting some of their last college visits in and college camps and things like that. So, you start missing some pieces when you're trying to play pattern match covered. I kind of liken it to, I was talking to our offensive guys about it. And, for me, when we're trying to play pattern match stuff with different pieces, it's kind of like the O-line when you're rotating different linemen inside of those 5 offensive linemen. It's kind of hard to get the continuity going. It's hard to, when you're playing pattern match stuff, there's a lot of communication involved. There's a lot of things that you need, corners and safeties and the sandbacker and the middle safety, the way we play it. Guys got to get on the same page with what we're seeing, routes we're defending, what the issues are in each coverage that we play. So when you're missing a couple pieces, what ends up happening is the pattern match stuff looks a little bit sloppy. So normally some of our man stuff and our 3 deep stuff ends up being a little bit better, but that's not really who we are. So, just to calm it down a little bit in the 7-on-7 sense and to get your kids a little bit of confidence, you got to change some things up here and there. But we always try to work on our base stuff with how we fit runs in our 7-on-7 deal, because those are the coverages we're going to play more often, right? So, I've done several videos on 7-on-7. I've talked about 7-on-7 before. It's good for a lot of reasons, but it's bad for a few reasons. So there's definitely some things you can carry in 7-on-7 that are a little bit more advantageous to success, depending on the type of success you're trying to have. So we certainly carry those things. And when we need to settle our kids down a little bit, we settle them down. But, today we were missing the Sam, the middle safety, and one of the high safeties. So 3 missing pieces to a pattern match deal is kind of tough with other guys roaming in and out, because communication is not the same. What routes, that you're passing off, and what calls the corners are making, and what the safeties think the corners are doing. And, the push alerts that, all of a sudden you don't have your middle safety there, and that's the guy that kind of runs the whole defense. So, but it's good to see also, because I think, for every time in the offseason or in the summer, I think when you struggle a little bit, it's a good thing for kids to understand that we're not there yet. We need to keep working. Coaching staff, obviously, it's great for us to see the things that we need to work on. We're going through a change on offense. Offense is becoming a little bit more tempo based, and that's kind of changing communication and all that. So you can't take for granted any of those 7-on-7 reps that you get. But, there's times where it's going to be sloppy and it's going to be ugly. And, especially in high school ball, where you don't really have your starting lineup per se. And if you bring 20-something kids, you're trying to play every one of them. So, the summer is that's kind of what the summer deal's about. And guys are getting reps that probably aren't going to get a ton of reps once you start camp. And, you're working on different rotations, and you're working on seeing if you can get depth at some positions. And for us, we play both ways. So trying to figure out which guys are going to be the dudes on offense, and can we play without them in our starting lineup on defense? And then can we use them when we need them? They're trying to figure out what we do on defense. So, receiver wise, they kind of understand their rotations and what they're doing. So, we're kind of at the end of the summer now, getting ready for fall camp. So depth charts got to start shaking out. Practice plans, we got to start getting ready with practice plans, and installs are pretty set. I don't think anything's going to change for us there. From the install component, I think on both sides of the ball and special teams wise, I think we know what we're going in to do and what we're trying to do the first 2 weeks. And then the third week gets into a game week, and now you got to start game prepping a little bit. For us, the way we do it, most of our prep will be our week 1 opponent. It won't be a ton of prep for our fall classic opponent. That's just not the way we operate. When we go into that fall classic game, it'll be a bunch of base stuff. Defensively, I'll probably look at some of the other fronts we want to play two ways to look at it. You run those in the classic where the result doesn't matter and you try and get reps, or you keep it on the back burner if it's something new. So one of the fronts we didn't play a ton last year, I probably won't run in the classic game just because I don't want it out until it's time for it to be out. In the day and age with Huddle, that classic game is going to get shared 50 different times. So, two methods. I've been doing this for 24 or 5 years as a head coach or a coordinator. And, there's take everything you're doing and put it on the table and see what works and what doesn't. But then everybody is going to get a chance to see some of the things you're doing. Or you just go in with your base structure and say, hey, here's how we're playing this game. Play our base stuff. Let the results be what they are. We're not going to pressure a ton. We're not going to show all of our blitzes. And we'll kind of, I'll sit down with the head coach and we'll kind of discuss that, how we want to play that game going in, how much we want to play starters, how much we want to get the backups. Are we looking for depth in certain positions? So, we're in that time of year now where that's the situation that we're in. We're gearing up for a season. We're no longer in the experiment mode that, spring and sometimes early summer can be with stuff. We're now in the mode of figuring out what works for us, what's best for us, what do we got to do to win games, how are we going to win games, trying to get, again, that continuity on both sides of the ball, trying to breed some success for our kids so that, success breeds more success and kids that are confident that can play hard. We're trying to make sure that they're seeing some success. So, I just had to, Philly, I just had to sit down last night on a Google Doc and put all my terms. So all of our stuff in our blitz families that we use, all my coverage terms, my fronts, the states and cities that we use, I had to list all those out on a Google sheet because the offensive coach and the special teams coach are trying to figure out. We're trying not to have carryover with our families. So we do on both sides of the balls and then special teams wise with some of our extra point muddle huddle stuff. We do everything in families. And then we try not to use the same things or at least the same words. So like, there may be some things that we do on offense and defense. So if we use NFL teams or if we use NBA teams on offense and defense, we try to go through the lingo to make sure we're not using the same ones so that, if we're using Spurs on defense, they don't want to use Spurs on offense. They may use Lakers, they may use Raptors or another NBA team. But I think what happens in the long run, and I've had several conversations with our head coach about it, is I think you can really drive yourself crazy with all that terminology. And if you can avoid carryover terminology, that would be great with two-way players. But at the end of the day, I still don't think we go back and forth about it. I don't think it's the end of the world. When I'm on offense, I have offensive thoughts. When I'm on defense, I have defensive thoughts. I could see where you're coming from, though. If I have something that I call Rip or Liz and they have formations that they call Rip and Liz, that can become a little bit cumbersome to kids. So, I mean, you try as a staff. We try to avoid that the best we can. I laid out almost, the 90% of the terms that we use from a front standpoint, a stunt standpoint, a blitz family standpoint, all the tags and things I have in coverage. So, palms and read and mix and roll and stump. And, I'm laying all those things out and they're going to try and avoid those things on offense and special teams if they can. Do I think it's the end of the world? No. Do I think it's a good idea to try? Yes. But I think at some point there's going to be some things, and you probably don't have to worry about it when you're not in the two-way world. So if those guys only hear, if they only hear banjo on one side of the ball, you don't have to worry about it. But if banjo means two different things, yes, that can certainly cause a little bit of an issue. But I think as a coaching staff, you can also make it more of an issue maybe than it really is. And I think when you do that, sometimes in the coaching world, I think you're always trying to figure out what your problems are and you're trying to come up with answers for your problems. And the big thing in the coaching world to me, doing this for a long time, is let's not create more problems. So if trying to find terms and using a thesaurus or something to come up with all these terms that you're trying to find, if that becomes more of a task that takes time away from actual coaching or planning or things like that, then I think it becomes, you're actually creating an issue. So sometimes by trying to alleviate issues, you might create other ones. So that's the big thing to me. And probably in any job or any business, but especially in the coaching world, when we're looking for answers, let's not create more problems when we're looking for solutions. That's always like the biggest thing that you're trying to figure out to the best of your ability. So, but it's just, again, it's one of those deals where now, you got to get back into that mindset. So I've got to get back into mindset of practicing every day and what our practice plans are going to look like. And, it's no longer experimenting with things that we want to try. It's now, all right, what are we carrying? What are we going in with? What are we eliminating? For us on defense, there may have to be some things that we take out and based on who we've got coming back. And, for us, our D line is going to be a little bit of an issue for us. We have no returners coming back on the D line. We're a little bit undersized. So figuring out how we're going to protect that. We lost one of, the kid that I thought was going to start at corner that I put a lot of time and effort into, transferred to another school. So I'm trying to replace him, and going through 7-on-7, we're trying to figure out. It's already opening day for you, Coach Gardner. Lovely. Is it you still in Utah or somewhere out west? So I'm trying to find, who's going to play the other corner now, and I'm trying to find kids that aren't receivers, and now we're kind of, my head coach after 7-on-7s, he brought up to me, maybe we may need to be field boundary, which I really don't like doing. But if we've got to protect somebody, then we got to figure out how to protect them. So now, when you get into the season, now you're kind of in crunch mode now, where now you're problem solving. How are we going to protect the D line? How are we going to protect the corner that's weaker? Do we have a safety that's more physical than the other one? Do we have one that's better in coverage? Same place you've been, right? Pretty sure that's the same place you've been the last couple of years. Is your week one still that big time opponent? I think last year when we did the podcast, your week one was a big time, either a rival game or a big time opponent. Those of you who don't know, Coach Gardner and I did a week two. Bishop Gorman's pretty big, I would say. We did a podcast when I was doing during a pandemic, I was doing some podcast stuff, and he was one of my guests. So does a great job on the defensive side of the ball. We've known each other through the never met in person, but social media world. We've known each other for a while. So, now you're getting into the world where as an offense or a defensive coordinator, now we got to figure out what we have, right? We got to throw away all the things that we like and that we want to tinker and toy with. And now it's like, all right, who are we? What do we really do? What front fits us? Do we need to move? How much do we need to pressure? When we pressure, what can we play behind the pressures? How long can we stay in base defense? Is our base defense good for us? Because year to year it fluctuates, right? Everybody's got we all have our base system. We all have what we want to do. We all have what we want to run. But if you don't have the cats to run what you want to run, then you've got to be able, to me, what makes a great high school coordinator on any side of the ball is the ability to adapt and adjust and improvise and overcome all the things you've got to overcome, because you're not recruiting players to a system. You're not saying, all right, well, what do we got? All right, so we need a Sam, we need a safety, we need, a forward technique. Where are we going to find them? Well, you got to find them within your room. You got to find them within your roster. So now you might be looking at a 4-eye that isn't a dominant 4-eye, and maybe you got to move. So maybe he's got to be a 5 and he's got to move. And that's where every coach in high school, when it becomes such a hodgepodge of year to year, kid to kid, transfer to transfer, incoming freshmen, sophomores, whatever it may be, kids that are playing football for the first time. It's now your job as a staff, and that's what makes this time of the year so interesting, is now we're getting into game plans. Now we're getting into, all right, look, we'd love to be, over front, split field coverages isn't good for us. We're going to have to play a ton of 3 deep. Well, you got to figure it out, so the more you have in your arsenal, the more tools you can pull from, the better off you'll be. Like I said, we aren't getting away from tight 3 high. It was very, very good to us last year. Probably the best defensive year I've had in a little while. And that school itself in general, it was my first full year with a new school. So, the best defensive year we've had statistically. And then, obviously going 8-2 and winning the district title. Those results match. So I'm not getting away from that by any means, but we lost some of the horses we had up front. we were able to pressure with 3 guys. We had 2 very active 4-eye techniques. We weren't big, but we were really athletic and active. And, we lost those kids. So now we got to figure out what we're doing to replace that. So when you look at how you want to replace that, now you're looking at deals where if you can't find the bodies now, you've got to figure out how the bodies you have play a certain way. So, maybe we're trying to figure out the 4 eyes, the nose, can we lag the nose or do we need to move them? Do we need to change the front a little bit? We're not changing the coverage behind it. We're not changing the structure behind it. Our middle safety returns. He's the best player, if not one of the best players on our defense. He's a Navy commit. So, we're still going to base everything around funneling runs to him, getting him involved in the run game as much as we can. We're still playing all of our split field stuff. But the interesting thing going into camp will be how much that changes from last year. How much base can we play? How much do we have to move? How much do we have to pressure? What pressures do we like? Do we need to zone pressure more? Every year those things change. The puzzle pieces change. And you are, as a coordinator and a coach, you are just finding the different ways that you're going to plug pieces into all these scenarios. And, that's why we do it. That's why we love it. So with every good and bad that comes with the season, the school year starts, that's kind of a negative sometimes. Obviously, your schedule changes. So for me, all the other things that I like doing, all the other hobbies or passions I have kind of go out the window, and it's really only one. It's golf for me. So that kind of goes on the back burner for a while. And now we get into, full grind mode, ready to go. Game plans, installs, practice plans, all the good stuff that everybody talks about. And, again, what I like to do during the season, every once in a while, I like to jump on YouTube Live. I like to talk to people. What are you seeing? What's out there? What's dominant in the world you're living in? What our offense is trying to do? Here's what we're seeing. What have you had success doing? Are you seeing a ton of RPOs? Are you seeing option and read game? How are you defending it? What's working for you? Because really, in this business, that's all you have is other people to kind of litmus test some things. And, you're not going to talk to college guys this time of year. You're not going to be visiting college campuses. They have jobs that they have to do. So their availability now, unless it's a really good buddy of yours or something like that, their ability is going to be gone. The availability is going to be gone. So thank you, sir. Is that the real Belichick? I didn't think he was a fan of this channel, but I'll take it. It's just one of those things where now during the season, how many people do you have to lean on? Who can you go to for advice, information, help? So for me, it's always the guys that I know in the social media realm. It's the guys that I know through the YouTube world. And it doesn't matter if it's a subscriber to the channel or somebody that's been a guest on the channel or somebody that's done a Zoom clinic for me. If it's information and they have help, you got to go get, the help wherever you need it. So I like to talk to other people and see what they're seeing. And if I'm seeing a steady dose of something, I ask other people, hey, what are you guys seeing where you are? What are you trying to do? Is it working? What's giving you problems? What have you tried to do? I like to lay out what we try to do, and say, hey, look, we're trying to approach this from a split field coverage, middle of the field open deal. We're trying to approach this from a quarters toolbox deal. Here's the issues we're having. Yeah, Finn Shave's a bitch. It's starting to become an RPO deal now. Off the Apex player. I still think, like, to me, if we're playing too high stuff and we're playing any type of quarters or any type of palms, if number 2 catches any type of glance or vertical route on us, then we're just not very good at what we do. If they're going to RPO the Sam and throw the fin route, we have to have other answers. If they're going to RPO the Sam and throw speed out, hitches, stick concepts, we have to have answers. If they're going to RPO the Sam and throw vertical to 2 for us as a split field team, we've got some big time issues. I never carried that concept on offense. I absolutely hated it. I always carried glance by 1 to a single side. I don't like the spacing of the route by 2. I don't like it versus too high. I think if we're any good at what we do and we're inside leverage on somebody with vertical responsibility, if they catch a vertical ball on us, we've got some big time issues. It's one of the reasons we're playing the defense. So the concept itself, though, gives us a bunch of issues, especially when it's the backside sometimes of running back push stuff. If that shave route gets inside and wins and then works its way vertical and the Mike linebacker has pushed the other way, that's a window that I think safeties can have a hard time with. When the offense runs it right, sometimes it looks like an under route and the safety doesn't know whether to, I tell our guys like the dirty vertical, anything that is still working vertical, I don't care if it goes under the Sam or the Will. If you can still see some type of chest plate face mask, do not get off that vertical. Do not leave and go to one. So, when it's backside Philly when it's backside away from running back push, that creates all kind of issues. Because now if you have a Mike linebacker that's matching a push and you're middle of the field open, we spend a ton of time with our guys away from whoever's away from three. If we're playing palms, we spend a ton of those, we try to tell those guys, if you can't be out leveraged by three, then you need to try and cut or almost carry all those routes coming back of two. But then when you start doing that, then if you're playing softer on the fin route, now, a quarterback with an arm, I would much rather them throw the fin to the field. If that's a ball that we have to give up, then so be it. We have some deals in coverage that we can play that I think can alleviate some of those issues. But when you go to those coverages, can you fit runs? I think 11, Coach Gardner has been the flavor of the month for the last year or two. 11 Y off, where the Y can move pre and post snap, has been the real flavor for everybody. The multiple guy at the Y, when you look at the NFL and how they get Kelce matched up for the Chiefs and things like that, like that's the guy that's becoming the guy. That's the issue. And it's not as big of a matchup issue for us in high school because I don't think we, at least on my end, we don't match things the way the NFL teams do. But that guy's creating issues. And it used to, the big thing used to be getting in 11 and attaching them to the core and creating three-man surfaces and trying to figure out how defenses were going to defend those three-man surfaces. And now I think the multiplicity and the versatility of the Y off coming from somebody who is an offensive guy as well. I just think there's so many other things you can do now in the split zone world and the bluff world and the slice world, where that guy's now running to the flat and all the different ways that you are, manipulating a five technique, who seem, even in high school, five techniques seem to be better players. So a lot of times if you can't block those guys, you've got to do other things to them. So, the Y off deal is becoming, and that's one of the reasons we went to a lot of our 3 high stuff. So like 3x1 Y off, are you going to poach the backside safety? Okay, well, he's still in the core. He's still a part of the box run game. So they still have all their, isolation runs, their power counter runs. They still have all their 2-back runs, even though he's a tight end body, because he's off the ball now. So he can run, he can be the wraparound counter. He can still kick on power. He can be an ISO guy on zone insert stuff. Post snap, he can go split zone. So where the big craze used to be trying to get 3-man surfaces and seeing how, teams are going to defend 3-man surfaces. Now I think the flavor of the month has become creating a quasi 3-man surface with a Y off that can do multiple things pre-snap, post-snap. And he's a vertical threat, right? So, 2x2, 11 personnel with, twins to one side and tight end flanker to the other. How you handling that? How you handling the run game issues? How you handling the pass game issues? That's always been a big one. I think, again, for me, I'd rather see him attached as a 3-man surface in 2x2 than I do off. I think we can handle the 3-man surface runs easier when he gets off, and now he can be a guy that runs counter, and now they can run all their read game and they can run bash stuff. And, with a little bit of jet motion, get back to power read and all these other things. That, to me, that makes you more multiple on offense. So the Y off deal, I think, is here to stay. I think that personnel group presents, I think a lot of guys don't like, I think your passing game, if you're a true passing game guy, I think you get limited maybe with the versatility of some things you can do with that body in there. But when you want to combine all of your runs with all of your RPOs with enough passing concepts to do damage, I think 11 is probably the way more people are choosing to go. And it'll be interesting this year and looking in college football. Obviously, every time you look at college football, that's kind of the litmus test for us. What are they doing? What's next? What are offenses doing? And then how are defenses handling it? So as a coordinator or a coach, I think you've got to, if you're a fan of a team, great. I think you've really got to pay a ton of attention to what is going on in the college world, because that's always going to be the next answer for us in high school. To me, it's not so much the NFL game. It's going to be the college game, the trickle down from the college game. So if you're seeing things in college on offense, get ready to see them in high school. Whatever the answers are on defense in college, get ready to try and use those, because those are probably going to be your answers in high school. So, it's just it's just a situation where every year brings new adaptations. Offenses are going to get better. We know it. We know the things they're going to try and do. We're starting to see more 4-strong passing game than we have in the past. So that's in 7-on-7. That's been interesting to look at. Some of the things that carry over from the NFL and college in the passing game, some of the easy throws and where they're getting their matchups and who they're trying to match up. Obviously, as a coordinator, those are all the things you always have to look at. So as the season starts to unfold, though, that's where I really, for me, especially trying to come up with content for videos and things like that, like that's always where you've got to, make your hay, so to speak. And that's what you've got to be studying and looking at. And because that's going to be the trickle down from college is going to come to us eventually. How quickly it gets to us, I don't know. But when you're seeing things in college, the game is a lot more conducive to high school than the NFL is. So I think the theories that you see in college, you better stay on top of those, because those are going to be the next things that you see. And then your answers when you're struggling, you may not be able to talk to those guys, but there's enough ways to watch games now, and there's enough film out there. And I know Catapult and some other people have tried to put the kibosh on people using film, because guys are making money using college film. And, that's an argument for a different day. But, there's just enough film out there. There's enough copies of things out there. Even if you can't get that stuff, if you can't get all 22 or college shit, you can always type things into YouTube and find games that were televised that maybe you didn't see. And, to me, that's where you've got to kind of, during the season, that's where you got to get a lot of your answers. You got to go to colleagues in the high school business that and then you got to watch some college stuff and put your own spin on what you think they're doing. It's a great question, Philly. Be interested to see what it is on offense. I think it's still going to be tempo, some version of tempo. I think it's going to be vertical choice passing game matched and paired with vertical run game. I think Tennessee's success last year is going to have a lot of people back in the tempo world. And I think the vertical choice passing game, where maybe you can get away with less concepts, but more options for receivers to run. I think I just watched a video with Lincoln Riley talking about you've got to have at least 2 runs and 2 passes in your system that you can run versus anything, that you feel confident versus any coverage, any front you can execute. And he was talking about how it's always nice to have calls, and it's always nice to have things that you like versus fronts and coverages. But he said every good offense has to have 2 runs and 2 passes that are universal, that you feel like you can and your guys can execute versus any coverage. What those are may change for people. Whether or not it's a version of 4 verticals, whether or not it's a version of counter, whatever it is, he just brought up the point that every good offense should have 2 runs and 2 passes that are universal, that you can call and feel like they can be executed versus anything. Obviously, they're better in some looks and not against some other looks. But that was an interesting point to me, hearing from what I consider to be top 3 offensive mind right now in the game and on the college level. Thinking about the fact that they're not always trying to game plan every single call, every single scenario. They've got some things that are, hey, this is what we do, and we do it versus every coverage. So I think the vertical choice passing game in the Tennessee world, not that they're the only ones doing it, but I think what they did last year is probably going to get – it's always going to be the team that nobody thought was going to be there that gives Alabama, Georgia, or teams like that a run for their money. Finding the group of five team that's having success that maybe doesn't have the same roster, and how they're doing it. Because to me, that's always really conducive to us in high school because they're probably doing it a way they need to do it based on their roster, which is the way we need to do it in high school. So, but that's, to me, that's the beauty of college football starting again is now when you do have free time as a coach. How much free time you have, I don't know. I know I don't have a ton, but when I do have free time now, that's where, for me, YouTube is always the go-to for me. And now that's where I'm just typing in everything I want to search and seeing what pops up from 2023. And, like last year, it took me a couple games to realize that TCU was starting to play three high stuff. And then some other people that were playing three high, I was always going back to all the standard Iowa State stuff and everything else. And then took me a couple games here or there to peek at some stuff. And it was probably stuff that I wasn't looking at. When I ran across TCU trying to play more odd front three high stuff, it was only because I was looking at something else. Might have been TCU Oklahoma. I don't know. I might have been looking at what Venables was doing on defense. Whatever it was, TCU came across and I watched it. And then all of a sudden, the more I started looking at it, I said, wait a minute. I think they're trying to play three high. And obviously, I don't know anybody at TCU. I don't talk to anybody there. So then I started watching them. And then there were a couple one AA teams. I think Samford and Wofford and Mercer at times. Finding out more for me, finding out how many teams were trying to play three high so that I had more study material, so to speak. And again, when I say study, I just want to make it clear to everybody, I don't have any connections in college. The only people I know are people that I met on a recruiting trail when I was a head coach for 22 years or 23 years. I have no big time friends in college. I have no hookups where I talk to people about what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I'm like everybody else. I get my information just like everybody else does. I watch stuff on YouTube, and then fortunately for me, having to call both sides of the ball at some point in my life, I think I'm at an advantage to where I don't know the terminology. I can't tell you exactly how they're playing things. I can't tell you exactly what their checks are, but if I watch it enough, I can kind of figure it out. I can kind of figure out what their 3x1 deals are, and I can kind of figure out what their changeups are to two removed. And, you can't tell every down. Some of those teams are really good with what they do. But when you don't have insider information, which I don't, in all my years of doing this, I just never really got to that level of meeting people and knowing people that were, now I see guys come by spring practice and you talk to them a little bit about what they're doing, what they're trying to do, but I really don't have a go-to couple guys, where, I know Cody Alexander has a couple and some of those guys have a couple, and, I'm just too busy doing what I do to ever run into those situations. So for me, it's watching college games, looking at numbers. I always like to go a couple games into the season. I'll go to like the NCAA page and I'll look at stats and I'll look at team defense and I'll look at rushing defense and I'll start perusing who's in the top 30 and I'll try and see if there's any outliers in there to say, all right, well, I never would have thought they'd be top 30. And I think Illinois was one of the big ones last year that popped up on everybody's radar when all of a sudden they were winning and playing some great defense. And then I took a look at that and it was a ton of double eagle that didn't fit me. So I never really went any further. A ton of man concepts, which didn't fit us at all. So, the positive and negative with college football is for everything you find that you like, there's going to be things that you look at and you go, that's not us. Like I'm a big Alabama fan. Everybody knows that. I don't do anything remotely. I think there's some things in our quarter, half world, their cover 7 world that are similar, but we don't do anything remotely near that. Our terminology is not even the same. So, for everything that you find in college that you like, there's going to be things that you find that you just say, hey, you know what? They're really good. That ain't us, So I think as a coach, the more you do this, I think the better accustomed and acclimated you get to realizing real quickly hey, that's us. Hey, that's not. And on both sides of the ball, it's the same thing on offense. When I used to study offenses, I used to watch teams play and I used to look at numbers and I used to see who was playing really well in college. And one or two games I could look at it and go, nope, that's not us. And there are other times I could look at it and go, you know what? Yeah, that's us. Watered down version. That's who we are. That's what we want to be. So, that's the nature of this business. We only have so many avenues to get information from. And we all have our ways of getting it and how we think we're getting it. And mine has always been YouTube. So that part of it I'm excited for. I'm excited to see what's out there in the college world. I'll follow Alabama as much as I can follow them. I'm not to the point where if they lose, it ruins my weekend. I'm not that kind of fan, but I've been an Alabama fan for 20, almost 44 years or whatever. So my first indoctrination of football when I started playing in 1978 was Notre Dame and Alabama, and everybody else was a Notre Dame fan. So I went Alabama. So I still root. I'm not a diehard college guy like a lot of the people in this area. I live in a huge college atmosphere, a huge college area, and the people are crazy. It ruins their weekend. People bicker back and forth and fight about shit all the time, Gators and Seminoles, and it's crazy. I'm never going to get into it like that. I've got my own deal. I've got my own team to worry about, and I lose more sleep over what we can and can't do than I do over what Nick Saban can and can't do. When Alabama's good, it's fun. When they're not good, it's not as fun. But I've never made a dime off an Alabama game. I've never made a dime off the national championship. So if they win, they win. If they don't, they don't. It is what it is. So I still try to. Now, when I do watch Alabama, I can tell you this. Like when I watch Alabama, Tennessee, I see real quickly where the issues are. And then I try and see how Alabama's trying to fix that. And I look at the roster Tennessee has and them scoring that many points and giving Alabama fits the same way Johnny Manziel did and the same way Ole Miss did, at times. So I certainly look at those things. And, I don't look at Georgia and how they give, if Georgia beats Alabama, I don't look at that and say, how did Georgia do it? Because I'm not at a place with that roster. Not many high school teams are. But when Tennessee does it, or Texas A&M did it, or Ole Miss does it, I am certainly interested in how they do it because I think that's, for me, it's more conducive to what we would have to do. You always want to look at, like in a high school world, how do those teams go about attacking better rosters? So I think there's a ton of valuable information to see how the lower or supposed lower tier teams are attacking the top teams in the conference, the top teams in the nation. Is there any carryover to what you're seeing that's giving these teams trouble? Is it anything, if it's a tempo deal, obviously you can do that in high school. If it's a personnel deal, I think you're limited with how much of that you can do in high school. But to me, the greatest thing about college football, more so than NFL football, is the varying rosters that in every league, the haves and the have-nots are still there, and how the have-nots have to try and compete with the top dogs. That's always where I try to study. I want to see how the lower tier teams are staying in games with the better tier. Is there a carryover? Is it tempo? It seems to be a lot of the time. If anybody has success against Alabama and Georgia, it's certainly not lining up and trying to bring that game to them. I think the two of them can do it to each other. I think there was a time when LSU could do it to them. There was a time when Ohio State could do it to them. I don't know if there's anybody right now in the country that's going to line up with Georgia and bring that game to them. So there's going to be other ways that you got to go about it. And what those ways are, obviously trying to figure out what, what teams have done to Alabama. I think there's kind of a copy and paste deal there because that's the only way you can go about it. I'd be I'd be interested, Philly, to find out how simplified you think that system is compared to Saban's. Because I've seen Kirby Smart in action. He recruited one of my players years ago. I don't know. I think they've taken some issues at Alabama, and I know in some of the clinics he's talked about. Um, I know he's talked about how they've changed terminology. Sorry, guys, 1 second. Cat issues. Nini. So I know there were some clinics. Again, apologize. I know there were some clinics with Georgia and Kirby talking about different things, and I'd really be interested when it comes down to it. I think they're still carrying a ton of shit. I think Kirby's still playing a ton of shit. I think they may have found better ways to communicate it versus tempo teams. I think they may have found some deals that were giving them problems at Alabama that they may have fixed a little bit with some of their field and boundary tendencies. When you hear them talk about mint front stuff and why they do it, that's one of the reasons why, because teams were finding out the field and boundary matchups, and with the college hashes, they could still put trips to the boundary, and they knew what the checks were, and they were beating them with things like that. And so, I think Kirby still tries to have answers for everything. I think that's in his nature. But I definitely think they've done a better job. I agree with you there. I just don't. I'd be interested, and again, not knowing anybody there, not knowing anything about it, I'd be interested to find out how much simpler. Is it really that much simpler? I don't know. The clinics I've seen, and one of them was really good. He's got one that's out on YouTube where they talk about tackles for losses and all the studies they did. They did a ton of work. It's interesting. Sooner mentions Iowa State. They did a ton of work with Big 12 teams and trying to figure out how, against all those explosive offenses, how teams were trying to generate tackles for loss and stem in the front, early down pressures, 6-man hot pressures. That's a really good clinic. You can YouTube that. I believe you'll find it if you just YouTube Georgia Clinic, Kirby Smart Defensive Clinic. A couple things will pop up. The one that's got the tackle for losses, and I took pictures of the slides that I keep on my phone. That was a real interesting study. A lot of Big 12 studies there. The thing now, Sooner, is going to be with what they've done with the roster they've had. Has everybody caught up to what they've done? And now that they need to do something else, that's going to be the interesting point. Matt Campbell stayed. He stayed loyal to Iowa State. You can go back as a businessman and look at that and say, I think he probably made the wrong choice. He makes great money at Iowa State. If he's happy there, so be it. If there's less pressure there, so be it. Great coach, does a phenomenal job. Whatever his decisions are his decisions, not mine. I just know when the iron's hot in that business, as loyal as you want to be, you got to strike and make all the money. Now, if the school you're at wants to match, and I think Iowa State's done a great job keeping people out of the mix for him. Excuse me. But I now think, being somebody that plays that defense and took a lot of my ideas from Iowa State, has the Big 12 caught up to it? Have offenses caught up to it? Did you maximize what you needed to maximize with the roster that you had? If you weren't able to improve the roster off of that success, if you couldn't improve the roster any, are you still going to be able to get away with doing? I think the big key, schematically, is always the easiest one to look at, and it's the most interesting one for us as fans and coaches to study. The bigger key to me is within that roster and within how they recruit is when you can't go out and get the same 5 stars as everybody else, how do you recruit the 3-star and then change his position to make him a dominant player? So some of the linebackers they recruit that they turn into 4 eyes or, defensive linemen that play maybe a little bit more athletically because they're not as big. That's where I think those guys in TCU and Gary Patterson were huge doing that. They couldn't get the same kids as Texas and Texas A&M. And so they got the next tier kid. And what they did was they found really good players and then they changed their position. And, I still think kids to this day want to play college football. I think we've kind of, excuse me. Hang it. I think I think we're still trending in a world that wants to specify everything with position training. And um, I think kids still think that their bread is buttered at a certain position. I know we preach to our kids on a daily basis, get on the field and have film, and then they'll tell you where you're going to play. Um, you may think it's receiver, you may think it's linebacker. Get recruited, get an offer. They'll tell you where to play, get an education, and play where they tell you to play. And it's worked out for a million kids. For, I would say it's probably 75-25 good, bad for who it's worked for and who it hasn't worked for. Um, and that to me is more interesting from a high school standpoint, because that's what we're doing with our roster. Like, we just looked at it today, and we're going to be a little lighter on the D line, but I think we have some linebackers that aren't going to be in the rotation at linebacker if they really love playing football. And that's it. I think as coaches, that's still the job we have to do nowadays. Like, when you talk to kids, when you first started playing football in a sandlot somewhere, whether it was two-hand touch or kill the ball carrier or all the things that probably politically aren't correct anymore, you never got in that game and thought about a scholarship. You never get in that game and thought about a position. You saw guys running around smashing somebody with the ball, and you thought it was pretty cool, whether it was you with the ball or you smashing the guy with the ball. You didn't know what a position was when you first started. You didn't know what position you'd play. You didn't know, when you're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, you don't know how big you're going to be. So how do you know what your position is? So when you first start playing football, you play because you love playing football. And if we could get that mindset back across to our high school kids and kind of explain to them, look, guys, you started playing football because you love it. If you love playing football, then play football. Doesn't matter if you're the Sam, the Mike, or the Will, play football. Doesn't matter if you're a nose or an end, play football. Doesn't matter if you're a safety or a corner, play football. If you're good enough, get on the field, make plays, help your team, be a better teammate. And the fun to me is playing football. The fun to me is not playing a position that I think I need to play and getting less snaps at that position because I'm dead set on playing it. The fun to me is playing football. And that's our job as coaches. That's our job, teaching young kids some of the things they need to learn, because they're not hearing that everywhere else. They're not hearing that from the right avenues. And outside of us in high school, they've got a million other avenues that they're going to, and, recruiting people and people that are making money, trying to help them get exposure and everything else. And you don't get exposure without film. You don't get film without being on the field. If you have good film and somebody evaluates it and says you're not a receiver, well, if you're a good football player, they're going to tell you that you're a safety. All right. Or if you're not a safety, they're going to tell you that you're a linebacker. I was talking about our middle safety is probably going to play Sam or Will when he gets to Navy. He's not going to be on a hash mark. He's not going to be a safety. So, when you're talking to kids, I think as coaches, that's one of the jobs we have to do, is still get across to kids what football really is, what high school football really is, why you originally started playing football, why you love playing football, and don't let the wrong information get in your mind. I think he's probably, if not one of the most underrated, the most underrated of all time, if not top 3, top 5. The job he was able to do, the longevity, bringing, a program to life in an area that wasn't used to good football. And it's interesting. It's interesting to me that the Big 12 happens to be a place where a lot of that goes on. Gary Patterson did it with TCU, and Campbell did it with Iowa State, and so many other people have done it, and what Oklahoma State was able to build. And the Big 12 seems to be kind of famous for that. And unfortunately for the Big 12, is it's now becoming almost it's not a destination anymore. It's a leap, it's a leap pad job or a launch pad job. It's not a destination job. So especially when Oklahoma and Texas leave, and all those other places are now launch pad places for bigger jobs. So to see a Matt Campbell stay is awesome. Hopefully you see some more of that. Yeah. and those guys are probably, Bill Snyder's old school, cut from a different cloth. So, it's good to see those guys that had success and success the way they did it. But I think where he was also really good was he went out and found people around him that could stay up with the way the game was changing so that he could be the head coach he wanted to be and not have to be the mastermind of everything. And that's what, our job is as coaches is you can't let the game pass you by. You've got to stay, in the here and now of what's going on and what you need to learn. And when I talk about, it's funny, you talk about players, but coaches are the same way. There's so many coaches that run what they run and they're not changing. All right. That's great. But as the game changes, I think you need to evolve a little bit. I think that's same thing we talk about with players. We talk about it with coaches and that's part of the job too. I've got a bunch of coaches that I've got to get better. I've got a bunch of coaches that I've got to find a way to make them understand what we're doing, why we do it, find a way to get them to understand how to run scout groups, find a way to get them to understand where the pieces fit. When you make a call, there's a reason you're making a call. There's a reason you're playing certain 3-by-1 checks. There's a reason you're playing to remove different ways. Our offensive coach, our head coach is going through it right now with offensive guys, trying to get somebody else to figure out all the whys. When you're running RPOs, it's cool to just put them together and call them, but do you understand why you're doing it? Do you understand where the outlets are for the quarterback? Do you understand which guys you can block and which guys you can't? When you start tagging things, in a tempo RPO world, do you realize why you're tagging certain things? If you got an RPO tag to one side, what are you doing to the other side? You can't just have those guys block because now if it's a loaded box, your quarterback doesn't have an outlet. So if the RPO is over there, you probably need to have some type of bubble, stand-up, access answer for the quarterback in a tempo world with a loaded box. So, part of our job as coaches, coordinators, and, my job doing this for so long is trying to get people to understand more than the X and the O, more than the diagram on the board. What is the chess game going on between the offense and the defense, and why are we carrying the things we carry? It's good to have a menu of your 3-by-1 stuff, getting guys to understand why you play what you play, and obviously as a coach, your first job is you got to get them to know what the 3-by-1 checks are. Granted. So if you've got a guy that coaches corners, he's got to know what the 3-by-1 checks are and what it means to the corners. If you've got somebody that coaches the Sam linebacker, he's got to know backers, defensive linemen, like each position coach needs to know what they need to know. But at some point through the season, the off season, the summer, you got to try and get those guys a little bit more adept to why you call the whole thing. So when there's going to be an issue with something, you got to kind of explain it and lay it out and say, all right, guys, here's where this is going to be an issue. So, if we play mix this week and this team is doing this, here's where we're going to have some issues. So we're going to have to carry stump, or we're going to have to carry a 3-cloud or a roll concept. If we get into this front, here's why we need to carry this 3-by-1 adjustment. It doesn't fit what we do in our base world. So, I think your first job as a coordinator is getting assistant coaches that can coach their position. And then your next job is getting guys to understand how and why you do everything. So then when the shit hits the fan on game night, you're explaining things that aren't Chinese to people. You're starting to explain, all right, guys, 3-by-1, we're getting ripped here. We're going to have to go to this or that. And then eventually those guys will have ideas of, hey, coach, why don't we play this? And if it's not a good idea, you need to explain why, and where the issue is going to be. All right, well, if we play that, here's the issues we're going to have. So let's lay out our issues in the game plan and figure out which ones we want to address and which ones we want to let the offense figure out where the issue is. Part of the deal as a coordinator is you always know where the issues are. The thing you've got to convince yourself of is the offense doesn't always know. You think they know, but they don't always know. So if they don't know the issue, then it's really not an issue. I think as coordinators, we make issues bigger than they are because we know what they are. If other teams don't do that, then don't sweat the issue until they do it. So, knowing what the issues are and what the answers are is a big part, but understanding, the opponent and living to fight another day is also a big part. And it's a big part in manipulating game plans and how much you can carry and what you need and what you don't. And then, so to me, the coaching world, when in a roundabout way, we're discussing last week going into camp and everybody's starting football and how that changes everything. Well, the one thing that doesn't change is you've got to educate guys on your staff. You've got to get guys to understand where they fit. You got to try and always hire, every staff has guys that want to be coordinators because they want to call plays, right? Because at the end of the day, it always seems like the guy calling the plays, it was the call that made the difference. No, it wasn't. It was the execution of the call that made the difference. Some calls are better than others. Some calls suck and they work out. Some calls are great and they suck. Everybody gets hung up in the coaching world on calling things. And there's too many guys that aren't ready to call things because they aren't ready for all the other pieces that go with it. So, when you call that, what's the answer? When you call that and they're doing that, what's the answer? What's the component to protect that call? What else are you building in to protect that front? What are you building in to protect that coverage? What are you building in to protect that path or that blitz? Offensively, what are you building to protect that run? What are you building to protect that pass protection? What else can you do to help the center or somebody else that needs help in protection? It's one thing to just dial up plays and go, all right, here's what we're doing. And it's another thing to actually be a true coordinator, which means you're coordinating a whole group of people and you're planning practices and you're organizing practices around the time that you have. And you're emphasizing the issues, what they are, what they are. Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good way to look at it, Philly. I mean, it's a majority of the time it's who executes. I mean, it's who gets done what they need to get done. And there's times where you make a 3-by-1 call that you think is perfect and they still beat you. You make a 3-by-1 call that you go, oh, shit, and then they don't run the play you thought they were going to run and you stop it. You make a 3-by-1 call and hope and pray they don't go to the single and then they go to the single. You make a 3-by-1 call to defend a single and they run spacing to the trip. So that's always, that's the beauty in what we do. That's the intriguing thing. Like if you knew every play they were going to call and you knew the call to make to stop it, I think it takes some of the beauty out of what you do. And the constant state of flux, the changes, the game time adjustments, the drive, in between drive adjustments, whether it's matchups, personnel, fronts, coverages, play, run game, pass protections. When you get into the greater scheme of coordinating things, there's so much more than just calling plays. Having a rhythm to what you call, self-scouting to understand what you call in certain scenarios to know that, all right, every time I get in a scenario, this is the call I make. Well, once it's on film 50 times, everybody else knows that's the call you make. So the use of statistics and analytical data and situational football and, even as simple as drive starters. Like there's a ton of guys, if you study them enough, their drive starters are always the same. There's defensive guys that feel pressure. There's offensive guys that do certain things, drive starters backed up, P and 10 backed up. There's guys that love doing certain things, all P and 10s, so, obviously, with all the information we have in huddle and stats and everything else, you're breaking down 1st and 10, 2nd and long, 2nd and medium, 2nd and short, 3rd and long, medium, short, 4th downs. And, I still think at the end of the day, if you do self-scout, you can change a lot of the things that you do. I know for me as a defense, I try to go 10 games straight where I never open in the same call. So if I'm middle of the field open in week 1, I'm going to be middle of the field close in week 2. If I pressure, first down, first play of the game in week 2, I'm not pressuring week 3. If I 5-man pressure week 3 and I don't pressure week 4, then I might 6-man pressure week 5. Like, it's just one of those deals where your ability to self-scout what you do and how you call things and what your personality is will help you probably as much, if not more, than scouting an opponent, right? So we all talk about scouting. We all talk about game plans. We all talk all the good shit, the cool shit. And a lot of times I think we don't scout ourselves enough to understand what we do, to understand why they're doing what they do. Right. So what you got to look at it is their game plan is going to be based off the scouting they did of us. So when you start to see teams game plan things and the same things are occurring in those game plans, you need to realize those things are showing up in game plans because they're scouting you. So if all of a sudden you're seeing the same formation, like last year, that there was a good and a bad to it, but the last 4 games of the year, we started seeing a lot of the same formations. The good part was we were seeing them from teams that never ran those things. So my deal was, all right, they're trying to give us issues, but they're trying to give us issues with things they don't do. So how good can they be at it? So we were able to survive a lot of those games because teams were taking film of what gave us trouble, and they were scouting us to understand where we had issues. And then they were trying to recreate those issues within their own offense. Well, if that's not what you do, good luck recreating that in 3 days. So that's the beauty of being a little bit different. I don't know if tight 3 high is different anymore. I know it was different from us. We were a 3-3 stack team, split field coverage team forever. We took it to another level with tight 3 high. It's always going to come down to pros and Joes, and it's always going to come down to Jimmy's and Johnny's. That's never changing in football. I don't give a shit what level it is. You know, the difference in the NFL is minute, but the difference is who's got the horses, the depth, the guy pulling the trigger, the quarterback play, the guys that get after the quarterback, who's got the elite pass rusher. That shit ain't ever changing. It's not changing for us. It's not changing for them. And that's why they make so much money, because the draft and free agency and everything, people, football became year round, and that's where the NFL Network became year round, because fans are now interested in the draft because they think they're roster experts. Fans are interested in free agency because they think they're roster experts, because most fans understand if we got better guys, we got a better team. So our level in high school, and probably junior high, even more so, whatever, it's never been more apparent than that. You get off the bus and the roster doesn't match up. What the hell are you going to do? You got to find a way to stay in games, and you got to find a way to manipulate the clock, and you got to find a way to manipulate special teams. And again, that's the beauty of what we do. And now that we are headed full force into it, that's going to be the beauty even more, because every season is a new season. So, as we go into it, 2 days left of lifting practice. We're testing kids right now on all their runs and broad jumps and verticals and all those things, and kind of rounding out the summer that way. And, when we go Monday, it's full season grind and all the things that come with it. And like I said earlier, if you were here, the beauty in that is, even for myself, all the videos I do, all the things I've done in the past, when this season starts, I'm going to have to find a way to win games with what we have. And that's never going to change. And that's the, if you've been doing this long enough, that's where the excitement comes from, but that's also where the angst comes from. So we would all like to roll out there with our roster that we know what we're playing. We know what we're doing. Good luck defending it. Good luck scoring on it. We'll see on Friday night. I think we all love that scenario. But I think we all are also, if you're on this channel or you're watching the videos that I do, you're probably in the same spectrum that I am. I didn't see any questions from Saban or Kirby Smart tonight. So I think everybody watching these things is all on the same level, even par with what I do. So we're all in the same boat. We're all now going into this season with hopes and expectations. And based off of last season, obviously you're either trying to turn it up a notch, or you're trying to get back to where you were. You're trying to turn a program around. We're all in our own situation. I don't know if I don't know enough about the feed the cat stuff. I know what it is. I've seen it. I don't know enough of it. There are a bunch of jumps in our off-season stuff. A bunch of different direction broad jumps. So teaching kids to broad jump and then broad jump 45, teaching kids to broad jump and then broad jump 90. We do a lot of hurdle work. Wish I could answer your question with what the Feed the Cat program is. I've never looked into it. I've seen it. I've seen it on social media. Ours is a bunch of change of direction, a lot of 10-yard times, build up 10-yard times, dynamic 10-yard times. We haven't tested the 41 time. And since I've been at the new school that I'm at with the strength coach that we have, we very rarely test that. We test a lot of other things. So, yes, there's a bunch of bounding and change of direction bounding that we do. A lot of sprint mechanic work because we are not blessed with a ton of overwhelming speed. So we're trying to develop it however we can. So running mechanics, stride length, stride frequency, striking the ground the proper way. We do a ton of deceleration work. So at least once or twice a week, we're going to do a bunch of decel work, full decel stops into change of directions, 45s and 90s. So I think our off season is about as good as probably most people's around for the kids that we have. It's very analytic driven, very statistical driven, and our guys do a great job with it. 24 years of doing it. Turnover in high school is going to be huge. Trying to find guys that stay in the building is going to be huge. You hire guys as teachers and coaches, and you hope that the underlying agreement there is that while they're teaching, they're coaching, and then they find out that coaching is a lot harder than they thought. They end up keeping their teaching job. Now that eats up a job in the building. So when you go to find another guy, that's one less job you got. So high school staffs are always in flux, I think. Finding a staff that stays together for a while with roles that they understand, I think, is complicated. Guys always want to move on. Grass is always greener on the other side. Guys want to be coordinators and head coaches way earlier than they should be. You do need those guys on your staff. Don't get me wrong. I always want guys that are hungry to do more if they are willing to go through the process to do more. If they want to do more just for the title, like where we are, I don't get paid anymore to be a coordinator. So, in Georgia, maybe they do. Texas, they probably do. In Florida, I get the same money as the other assistant coaches. So my job is really just a title with more responsibility. I have more work to do than everybody else, but the supplements are kind of percentage based. I'm from New York, so I can imagine they don't. Trying to get guys to understand that you're really just trying to take a title on. Maybe if you take that title on and you put it in your resume, maybe you hope it does things for you in the future. But, if I had to address young coaches in today's day and age, they all take on jobs that they're not ready for. They all get coordinator gigs earlier than they should. And predominantly for a lot of them, I think it goes the wrong way. Some of them catapult to really good things, good for them. But I've seen way too many guys in my area in my time of doing this that, want the status of play caller, don't really understand what comes with the job, don't understand that when they're calling plays and the paycheck's the same, they want to know why the paycheck is the same. You basically just took a job with more responsibility for the same pay, so you've got to be a little bit deranged. You got to really love football or be a little bit psychotic to take on more responsibility for the same amount of money. That's not really the way the world works. Most businesses you would venture into, the more responsibility you have, usually the more you get paid. In the coaching world and the football world, it kind of works the opposite. You end up making less money because you've got a bigger job description with more things on your plate for the same amount of money as the guy that's just coaching a position. So, all those things when you get in, so you don't, there's no bitch about it. There's no complaint. I know that when I accept the job. I know that when I accept the head coaching job. I know that when I accept the assistant job, the coordinator job. Like this is one of the only businesses in the world you can describe to people where I coach and live and have been for the last 24 years. If you don't do a good job, you get fired. If you do a good job, you make the same money. So we have so many guys that leave Florida and they go to Georgia and they go to other places, and so many other guys that try to get into Florida for what they think Florida is. Lay a job description out to somebody in the business world that says, hey, go out there and knock this out of the park and make the same money. But if your sales numbers don't reach it, you're fired. So then that person's going to come in and go, all right, so you want me to do more work, meet more clients, make more business transactions. But when I make those transactions, you're going to pay me the same. But if I don't make them or reach my quota, you're going to fire me. Find out how that works in the real world. Let me know what your research is, because growing up in New York around Wall Street people, around business people, one of the reasons I never got into it, I was never interested in it. But I will say this, from being in the football world and the coaching world, I'd rather be in a situation where I get paid for performance and fired for performance than be in a situation where I keep a job for performance, but I lose one for poor performance. But again, if you get into coaching, you better know that going in, and you better understand that. And that's why you see guys constantly trying to migrate to the states that do it differently. And they're trying to get to Georgia, and they're trying to get to Texas, and they're trying to get to the states where guys are coaching doing so. I don't know if that's a world you want to live in. If I'm playing just a standard overfront, our ends are going to spill every damn time. So if you want to say, you know, if there's no, like, we're going to 80% of the teams we see, there may not be a tight end in. So what technically is inside the tight end? If I'm a 5 technique, am I inside the tight end? I don't know. We teach, for most of our base schemes, everybody spills. So the 1 technique spills, the 3 technique spills, the 5 technique spill. Now, if we pressure and we need to box, then it's a little bit different. I would love to say cold, and it's by no means, YouTube Live is never hijacking a thread when you're asking questions, so don't worry about that. The coverages you play behind it dictate more of the spill box mentality than what the guys up front are doing. If you could find a way to teach guys that based on where they line up, they spill or box, if you can find a way to make that work, I think that's an interesting idea. The way you're going to make that work is with the coverages you're playing behind it and how you're fitting off of those box and spill schemes. So we don't approach it that way. One of the reasons we play tight front is because we spill everything by alignment. So we still teach kids to spill. 4 eyes are still going to get trapped. Our 4 eyes read guards, not tackles. And one of the reasons we do is because if they arc release, I don't want to get trapped. But our 4 eyes spill. We got to teach our nose, if he's unblocked, to try and spill trappers. That's just, to me, a good defensive principle. Try and get the ball going east and west. If you box things, I'm not saying it can't be done. We do box things in our defense, but we only box things that are conducive to what we're doing behind that. If I've got guys I'm trying to send the ball to, then I certainly want to spill it and create no vertical entry. We read guards. So your visual key would be a guard. Your pressure key would be the tackle. For us, the way we play 4 eyes. And again, the reason behind that, it is, your alignment is on the tackle, but your visual key is the guard. Because if we start getting a lot of these arc release schemes and we play off the tackle, then it's a deal where the arc release, it's like the 7 technique on a tight end. A tight end arcs you wide and then they run power. Well, I don't really know if that's the deal you want. So I always, with a 7 on a tight end, an inside eye on a tight end, we read the tackle. 4 eyes, we read the guard. I've always read guys inside of us, simply because I'm constantly worried about getting arced, widened, and trapped. So brass tacks, breaking it down, we're probably more hands on a tackle than we are. We try to make it as simple as we can. If the guard comes at us, we're trying to whip the guard's ass. That's as simple as we can make it. If the guard goes away, we're trying to squeeze the guard. You're probably going to end up with more of your pressure coming from the tackle. You try and eliminate as many double teams as you can playing a 4 eye. But as far as hands-on, if I had to give you a percentage of it, it's I don't think it's necessarily hands-on tackle, eyes on guard. If the guard down blocks and we can get our hands onto the guard and get skinny through the pressure of the tackle and now turn into the down block of the tackle and split it like a double team, that's a better deal for us. If the guard's down and we don't try to work out to get hands on the tackle, if the guard's out, we're going to try and penetrate to beat the guard out. And depending on what the tackle's doing, now if we're getting a down block and heavy pressure, it may turn into more hands on the tackle than it is hands on the guard. But day one, I would like to strike the guard every chance that I could possibly get. Now, why don't you play a 3 technique? I don't like the alignment of the 3 technique. I think 3 techniques, double eagle. To me, we could play double eagle and make it a little bit easier on a kid playing the 3 technique because now you're on the guard. But to me, it's almost our base structure with the 4-eye. He's almost a slant player by nature because he's almost always moving towards the guard. Pass sets are one of the only things that become more vertical in nature. We do not put the onus of contain on the 4-eye. We do it with the Mike linebacker. So, we hump almost every back block we get. So, back blocks on the nose, we try to hump. Back blocks on the 4-eye, we try to hump. The only thing with going across the top of blocks you got to be careful with is how fast your linebackers play. If your D linemen are going over the top of blocks and your linemen are running like hell, eventually the ball is going to go behind you. So sometimes you got to sync up. If you're humping blocks on the backside, you may need to slow some backers down. That's just, to me, that's just experience and getting burned. So like when we were a 4-2-5 team and teams would run power and we'd get the back block on the 2 or the A shade or the 2 or whatever you want to consider the technique you're playing in the over front, we always tried to hump the block of the center. But if the will runs the way he wants to run, and now you're humping and running, now you get some issues on the backside. So, sometimes you may have to tie up humping the D lineman with plugging a backside backer. That's just, is that intricate? Maybe, I don't know, but I think you need to tie some of those things in. If you're humping back blocks with a lineman and you're running like hell with a backer, because most of your back blocks are going to come on pull schemes, right? You don't get a ton of, if you get duo, you'll get double teams. But if the center's blocking back on a 2-eye, it's probably because the guard's pulling. If not, it's a full zone scheme, and that you got to teach the 2-eye the difference between a back block and a zone scheme at them. So yes, we hump back blocks. We get a ton of guard back on the 4 and tackles pull. A lot of teams now versus our tight front, they run power with the tackle pulling, a lot of dart. So my theory, Rock, on halftime adjustments is they are extremely overrated. We had a week to prepare for something. We had 3.5 to 4 practices to prepare for it. We didn't get it done, and we're going to get it done in 12 minutes. I don't know how much of a theory that is. To me, halftime adjustments become slight wrinkles in the game plan, mental adjustments to how you're playing certain things, where guys' eyes are. Maybe you're not reading the right things. Maybe you're not making formation adjustments correctly. I don't believe in halftime adjustments that are a different scheme or a different I believe in mindset changes. So if we went in heavy pressuring and that's not working, now maybe the halftime adjustment is let's go back to playing more base. If we went in with a base theory and didn't pressure and that's not working, maybe the halftime adjustment is more pressure. If we had 3x1 adjustments, or if we went in with a 3x1 check that was not good, maybe the 3x1 check. When I think of the term halftime adjustments, I think about the typical high school setting. Kids play both ways. 7 minutes to talk about offense, 7 minutes to talk about defense. I don't know how many adjustments you can make in 7 minutes that you couldn't make in 5 days. So I don't want to say that halftime is pointless. By no means. Please don't take that as what I'm saying. But I think the old miracle, hey, coach, the second half was great. You must have made some great adjustments. I think that's a little overrated because of the amount of time that you have to make adjustments with every player. For our guys playing both ways, if they get 7 minutes to talk to the receiver coach and 7 minutes to talk to the DB coach, what changes are we really making in 7 minutes? A lot of times for me at halftime, it's more about talking to the kids and going, hey, look, what's comfortable, what's not. So I've had kids at halftime come back and say, coach, stay out of 3 deep, please. Stay in our base stuff. We fit runs better. I think the better gauge as a coach at halftime is getting a feel from the players to say, all right, what's the issue? Where are the issues? Is there anything we got you like that you think can handle that? To me, it's more about mindset adjustments, reads, keys. Are we setting, are we getting set? Do we have the front set where we want it? Is the Sam where we need him? Those are the adjustments that you're making. Occasionally, is there going to be an adjustment at halftime where you go, hey, look, you know what? Instead of setting the Sam this way, when we see that set, here's what they're doing. Let's set the Sam to the other side. Yes, that's happened before. Has there been a wrinkle in a blocking scheme or, hey, on power, we're having a hard time getting to this guy? That's the front we're seeing. Let's do this. Yes, that's happened before, but I just think the overall term halftime adjustment, I think the overall term halftime adjustment is a little overrated. So yeah, we try to stem. Our easiest stems for us is like when we play mint front, it's the same rules as tight front for our D lineman. It's just a Mike linebacker going down away from the Sam. So we try to stem to things like that are easy. The way we play our 4 down front, we stem to that because it's the Mike linebacker doing it. So we might start in the tight look with the Mike linebacker in the box. And then when we stem, the Mike linebacker stems down to a 5 technique. So those are the stems for us that we use more often. We don't play 4 down linemen. So for us to get into different odd looks and stem to an even front or to be in even looks and stem to an odd front, those are not really in the parameters of what we do because our 4 down stuff is all the Mike becoming the 4 down. And the reason we do that is because I don't think personnel changes in high school are as I don't think they're as big of a deal as people make them out to be. I know at my place, I'm trying to find 3 down linemen to play in an odd front. If I could find a 4th, we might be an even team. So where I'm going to get that 4th D lineman. Now, when I say that, do we have short yardage stuff? Yes. Do we have bigger packages? Yes. Are they things that we do every down? No. So we go to different fronts and we choose our Mike linebacker this way. So when we pick our linebackers and we pick our personnel, the bigger plugging linebacker is going to be the Mike because he's not involved in our base coverages. So, our Will has to be involved in coverages. He's got to run a little bit better than a Mike. So when we pick when we get kids early as 9th graders and then as they develop in the weight room, we try to pick and choose the roster to say, all right, this needs to be the Mike. He's got to be comfortable playing with a hand on the ground. One of the things I like doing, if I find body types early that have played with a hand on the ground that I think can stand up, I would love to take that kid and teach him how to play Mike, and then he becomes the 4th down because he's already been a 4th down guy, a hand on the ground guy. If you ever get a kid that was a defensive end in Pop Warner that wants to play linebacker, I think sometimes that's advantageous the way we want to do things because I'm always in our structure and our scheme, I'm always looking for a Mike that could be a defensive end. It fits how we do things. It fits our personnel with what we do. So we have the choice to pick and choose who we want to play certain spots. So it's on us as coaches to tell them, no, you're playing Mike, you're playing Will, you're playing Sam. That's our job. Kid's a linebacker, in my opinion. If he tells you he's a linebacker, okay, we'll go to the linebacker group and we'll tell you which one you are. You're still a linebacker. Well, our Mike's a linebacker. He's down when we go 4 down. So, and then when we build our pressures, one of the ways we manipulate the ego of it is when we go to our 4 down stuff, a lot of our stuff becomes single fire pressures because the Mike is the 4th down. So if I tell them, hey, look, when we run this blitz family, it's always the Mike and the Will blitzing. As soon as I go to those 4 down fronts, now it's just a single fire with the Will. But when I explained it to the kids, I said, hey, who pressures when we run NCAA pressures? All right, coach, maybe if it's a Mike and a Will, okay. Well, then in that front, it's the Mike and the Will. Well, the Mike's already down. He's pressuring. Here comes the Will. All right. And then when we change the front, it's the same way. So we kind of massage the ego a little bit with how we do the blitz family stuff. And we kind of tell guys, all right, look, here's the blitz family. And so that the Mike is really a 4th down rusher, but we put him in a package to go, hey, this is our 5-man pressures and we're blitzing these 2 guys. And the Mike's already doing it. So, the smart Mike understands. He said, all right, coach, well, I understand the path, but please don't say that's me in the blitz. I'm not blitzing, so The smart kid gets it. He understands, but the terminology of it, when we break it down into families, fits because now when we change fronts, if the mic's involved in the pressure, he's already there. So for us, the mic is involved in 95% of our pressures for that reason. So, again, within your own system, that's the beauty of being a coach or a coordinator is you get to build your system the way you want it. So my system is built off of ideas of things that I like, ideas of things that I've stolen, and ideas of things that I think we can do within our personnel. And then I morph it to what I want. And that's every coordinator's job. You don't plug and play schemes verbatim anymore, in my opinion. I think you take schemes that you like, and then you think, no, because when he's built in, that doesn't mean we're sending 5 or 6. So, like when we go to 4 down and play base defense, he's just a 4th down guy. So he becomes a defensive end in nature, but that doesn't mean I'm sending 5. That just means in my terminology, when I want to send 5, I've already built him in. So every time the mic goes down, we're not pressuring. So you can't say that when he's down, we're pressuring. When he's down, we're just playing 4 down theory. So we're playing over front and min front. That's all we're doing. So, we put him down to the side of the Sam and play over front. We put him away from the Sam and play mid front. That's the only thing we're doing. We're building the fronts in using the mic as the adjuster in the front. And again, the reason we do that is in high school, you see when we play 4 down over front, he spills 100%. And he goes with the D-line and gets work with the D-line during Indy. And that's something that as a coordinator, so like in our system, we have a lot of hybrid guys. My middle safety has to get some work with linebackers. My safeties have to get work with corners because we play some coverages that are the same for them. So the mic has to get work with the D-line. To answer your question, when we play 4 down over front, he spills. When we play min front, he's a dent player. So if my D-line isn't working spill in Indy, then I'm finding a new D-line coach. And when the mic goes down there, if he's not working spill, we're finding a new D-line coach. That's part of the deal, being a D-line coach and teaching block rec and what the response is to those blocks. So, if you're a spill team, you're teaching spill. I dent them in the mint front. So, again, every defense and every coordinator has their own deals of what they do and why they do it. And you carry as much as you think you can carry. If I have a Mike linebacker that can't do those things, then I don't call those things or I won't do those things. So if I have a Mike linebacker that can spill, we're going to play over front. If he's having a hard time spilling, I either got to find another Mike linebacker or I got to stay out of that front or I got to move. So, if you don't think the kid can spill, well, then run 2-man games with him in the 3 technique and take gaps away with movement and spill with the movement, right? If you don't like kids spilling, then like we run tight front because it spills by nature. When you play with a nose and 2-4 eyes in a 5-man box, most runs matriculate to the C gap because of the nature of the front. So if you don't have kids that can spill, play fronts that spill by alignment. Whatever those fronts may be, for us, it's tight. So the over front for us and the mid front for us are 2 different worlds, and we play them with different coverages behind them. So when we get in the mid front world, he's more of an edge rusher, like a weak side jack 3-4 guy. So I don't ask him to spill in that. I ask him, but I also don't ask him to box. If he's a playmaker, I ask him to dent and make plays. If he's really good as a playmaker, I'll let him dent when we go to over. But the way we fit everything behind it is based on the fact that he's going to spill it. So if I'm teaching guys to run because we're going to spill power counter, if he's good enough, he's just making plays, 100%. And that's my job to figure that out. If he's just a body, he's spilling almost everything. If he's just a body, he's going to spill in he's going to spill in mint front too. The kid I got is a sophomore that I think's a damn good player. So he's going to spill in over and he's going to dent in mint. And if that becomes a problem, I'll change it. That's my dude a year from now. Right now, he's good, but he's not good enough where I'm going to tell him to dent everything. So a couple years ago, I took a head coaching job at a place that had a 5-star defensive end. And we taught he was taught differently than the other defensive end. The defensive end spilled everything. This kid dented everything and made plays wherever he can make plays. So within the defensive line coach had to teach two different theories. That to me is just football. I'm not spilling with a 5-star defensive end that every school in the nation has offered. And that kid wasn't a spilled player, so I'm not going to bang my head against the wall. So flexible is a good word. My theory is more hybrid. In the high school world, I try and find guys that can play positions, and I try to make their jobs as similar as I can possibly make them. So that when you start to see formations trade and change, and that's why I am adamant, I don't want to play boundary corners and boundary safeties. I want guys that can play both sides. I want guys that play read side coverages, away side coverages, field side coverages, boundary side coverages, because at some point, the offense is good enough to take your field side people and make them boundary people. They're good enough to take your boundary people and make them field people. So if you're a field-based team that disguises things to the boundary and they start trading you with the formation into the boundary, you're going to have a way to answer that. When your boundary guys can only play certain coverages, your answers are all dictated and the offense knows what your answers are. So I'm always living in a world where I want my Sam and my Will to be hybrid players. Well, here's the interesting thing, Cold. We don't see 22 a bunch. If I was in a world where I saw 22, I may not be a 3-high team. Our 3-high kid is 6'1", 200 pounds, so he's going to play Sam or Will at Navy. So he's going to bang with everybody, and he's fine doing it. So, again, when I got to the school, I chose who I wanted that kid to be. So a lot of it comes down to you choosing who the kids are going to be and then fitting everything to their skill set. I think that's what makes a coach a coach. And then there's guys we play to their skill set of things they can't do. There's plenty of them. And I would say, I played high school football in Long Island. I played college football in Queens. I know enough about the New York to say that there's enough 3-high guys out there for what you see and what you face, that you can find enough guys that can play the 3-high spot, because the dudes on offense you're seeing are not the same as the guys we're seeing. So trying to match 3 vertical or trying to match what you think might be an issue, I don't think it's as big as an issue for you, because that 3 vertical is not the same 3 vertical we see. From time to time it might be. So, but I still think if you break it down, Philly, it's still, there's state championships being run with the wing tee. There's state championships being run with flex bone. There's state championships being run with air raid, and state championships being run with tempo. And there's odd front state champions and even front state champions. I certainly think your schedule ought to dictate who you are, right? So I'd be lying if I sat here and said, look, we're a tight 3-high team. That's who I am. That's what we do. We're a tight 3-high team because it fits us and it fits the schedule. If I played a different schedule and you told me I had to match with all 22 personnel, I may not be a tight 3-high team. But I don't see tight, I'm not going to worry about 22 personnel if I don't see it. If I see it less than 10% of the time, then I have adjustments to handle it to where we can play heavier boxes and, we can play different deals. But I think what makes what we do unique is every part of the country we're in, we all have different things that we're dealing with, and you need to deal with the things that you're seeing. And you can ask other people what they do. So, people ask me all the time, it's a very similar question like that you mentioned, Cold. Well, how would your tight 3-high match up to 22 personnel? Well, shit, if you're telling me I'm seeing 22 all the time, I may not be tight 3-high. I mean, it's not that to me is a logical progression in the coaching world. So if I was, if I was seeing more of that, then if I wanted to be odd front, well, then I may be an under team. I may be a 3/4 quarters team that plays under fronts and reduction fronts. I've got to fit what I do to what I see. And if I'm seeing a steady dose of things that don't fit what I do, then I need to change what I do. But I think you also, you got to take into consideration, it's got to fit the kids you have. You can't run a system with kids that can't play that system just because it's your system. So we're constantly, every year, I'm constantly adapting what we do, rules to what we do, how we play certain coverages. Our rules and palms from one year to the next might change. How we declare to the flat, what leverage I play the corner in, what leverage I play the safety in. That may change from year to year when that kid changes. So to me, though, the one thing that I am adamant about is early on, I'm going to try and find kids that can be hybrid players. So my Sam better be able to handle being in the box, and my Will better be able to handle being outside the box. And I choose those kids that way. Now, if they can't, then we become a field boundary team. And to me, I am anti-field boundary for all the reasons I just talked about. I think offensive guys are too good to play field boundary. I think they're going to, they're going to set you in things that you think are fine, and then they're going to trade and motion you into other things, and you're going to find out that your boundary kids don't know how to play 3x1. So the only check they can play is 3 deep. So now every time you get FIB, you're 3 deep. That's not a world you want to live in. So I stay away from field boundary, and I try to build hybrid players that in the offseason, in 7-on-7, in summer, I try to put those guys in situations that aren't really advantageous to see what they learn, to see what they retain, and then to see the matchups to see if they can do it. So, we have some deals where the Will linebacker is outside of a number 2 playing flat force in a quarters concept, carrying 2 on the wheel. Well, we had some issues where we needed to do it, worked on it in the offseason. The kid we have can do it, so we do it. If the Will couldn't do that, well, now I got to make completely different coverage checks to those formations that are giving me issues because the Will's not that player. Or if the Will's never taught that. So to me, if I'm the coordinator and I know what the Will has to learn now, it's on the linebacker coach to understand, it's up to me to understand that the linebacker coach, hey, make sure the Will gets some reps playing quarters this week. Make sure he gets some reps playing D-gap flat force and carrying the wheel, because if they're going to be 11 personnel with tight end into the boundary, we're probably going to want to play quarters to that. Or at least we want to have that in the toolbox to play. If the Will never gets those reps, I can't play it. So, the simplicity is in the approach. The simplicity is in carrying the things that I don't run everything I talk about. Like, if you're going to be on YouTube Live for 2 hours and you're going to talk about a bunch of things for 2 hours, I can't run everything I talk about for 2 hours. If I've got 500 videos on YouTube, I can't carry all that into a game. So the play fast mindset is teaching all the things we think we need to teach with enough answers for a game, and then carrying things in the game that are second nature that the kids can do fast. Play fast was never about being an up-tempo offense. That had nothing to do with it. Yes, that's what we were, but play fast came from a mindset of, all right, what makes kids really play fast? Kids play fast when they're comfortable with their assignments. Kids play fast when they're comfortable with their alignments. Kids play fast when they're comfortable with where their eyes should be. That's when they play fast. Kids play slow when they're confused. So, the whole play fast branding is around a mindset, and how we get those kids comfortable is our job. So when a kid is not comfortable doing multiple things, well, then he can't do multiple things, and so if kids play fast when they've seen it before, how do they see it before? You've got to make all those pictures for them to see in practice. You've got to understand what your periods are, and you got to understand exactly what they're going to see and give them the look to see it. 1 dig, 2 skinny posts, 3 dig, a single receiver on choice versus your mix covers. 2 skinny and the 3 dig are answers for solo, 1 dig and 2 skinny. Anytime they can eat up the free safety, or for me, the middle safety, and run 2 on a post, that's always going to be the mix beater. The way we play defense with an extra safety on the field, we should be in better situations than if that was a Sam linebacker. So for me, it's never going to be the Sam linebacker doing it. So anytime the 3 works vertical and eats up that player, and the 2 can work the real deal, like when you talk about like what Tennessee does with vertical choice, the real deal to me, if 2 is your dude and teams play mix, number one runs vertical choice comeback. Number 3 runs opposite hash, and you let number 2 run vertical choice off of the open hash mark or whatever. And now 2's your guy that you want to get the ball to. He's got the ability to rip the seam. He's got the ability to run skinny post. You can break him off on digs, whatever you want. But to me, instead of having 4 guys with vertical choice, your best dude gets vertical choice and everybody else has landmark routes. So the outside guys can run vertical comebacks. The 3 can run the bend to the opposite hash mark, and you use the rest of the field to work the 2, who's your dude, on all of his vertical choice concepts, and tell him based on leverage and, having grass and space, we want you to win. These other guys are occupying bodies. You're our guy. This is the coverage we like. You got to win on this guy, and we're going to give you plenty of room to win. That to me is how you attack that. And that's why we have to carry other answers, because I know the mix beater, and I got beaten 7-on-7 today with it. I know teams are going to eat up the middle safety with 3 running vertical dig, whatever he runs. And then they're going to attack the safety with outside leverage and run number 2 on a post. So, close in the middle of the field, carrying another 3-by-1 adjustment. That's the beauty of football. That's, hey, we're in mix. I'm in mix. You should be able to draw up a mix beater, right? If your kids block it and run the right routes, you should beat the coverage. If the offense knows the coverage and everybody executes, there should be somebody open all the time. So I've thought about that before, Cold, on doing these. I thought about turning my house into having a whiteboard that's a wall. It's one of those deals where on YouTube Live, it would make it a lot easier for people to see visuals if words don't present pictures and you need to see something, then it would be a lot easier. So that maybe down the road, Cold Draw, that's something I can do. So, yes, NFL's all matchups. They figure out how to get the guy they want matched up, and then when they get him matched up, he's got all the choice routes, right? That's Cooper Kupp, Kelsey. That's everything that those guys do. Get into formations that find him the matchup, work him in the matchup, formation it, motion it, do everything you can to figure out what the coverage is. And then on defense, that's where the Belichicks of the world are so good at what they do, because they're going to find a way to bracket your best guy. So, it's funny that, Haswai Juke was probably one of the Patriots' best answers when they had Welker and guys like that. But it was also one of the things that they defended very well, because they've got 80 different ways to bracket different people. And, but that's probably a story and a conversation for another day. But that's football in general. Get your best dude on my worst dude. And then my job as a defensive guy, when we play that front, he's always the 5 technique. The issue we have with base over, when we play 3 high and we play base over, we've got to cancel that A and B gap out for our run fits to be the same. Appreciate it, Cold Draw. Thank you very much. So for us, when we play over front, we're going to move almost every down. So if there's anybody on here that's on our schedule, you just got that tidbit. I don't like the open A gap with where the middle safety is in certain coverages that we're playing behind it. So I am going to take that A gap away almost every down. So 4 down for us is more of an adjustment than it is a defense. Mint front, we won't move a ton. We'll pressure out of mint front, but that's more of an FIB deal. So if we're getting a bunch of FIB and teams are trying to run perimeter runs to the field, we'll jump into mint front and we'll put the mic to the field, because we'll match the Sam to the FIB. So I get the best of both worlds. I've got an edge defender that can help me with jet sweep and perimeter runs to the field, but I'm also matching the personnel into the boundary the way I want to match it. So that's kind of where the mint front idea for us comes from. 4 down for us, we have to carry 4 down, even if it's not base 4 down. And the reason we have to carry it is because everybody's going to gain. you can't let everybody game plan tight front beaters, because if you have enough film and enough time, tight front has several runs that can be game planned to uh, get the leverage you want. So to protect your tight front, you're going to have to carry other things. So the reason we carry the over front is because now teams have to be ready to block that front. Right now, the plan is to play tight front and over front from 3 high, and mint front we're going to play from 2 high. So that guy that that maybe cold draw if you're worried about finding him, that guy for me is also going to line up at Mike linebacker when we play mint front. We're going to present 6-man boxes and different boxes. So for me, it's all about changing angles and numbers in the box. We're as a tight 3 high team, we're a light box theory. We're trying to get you to run the ball, and then we're trying to push the runs where we want them. We're trying to invite runs based on the numbers in the box. So we have to carry other fronts that change the leverage, and then we have to carry fronts and boxes that change the numbers. So mint front for us is a way of changing numbers in the box. What do you consider blood with the DN? So would a blood technique just be a heavier 5 that can get reached and play the B gap, or would a blood technique be an automatic B gap stunt? Would it be because blood? The term blood for us is when we're in over R1 and R3 technique post gap move that puts us into under. So like if I said blood, R1 and R3 post snap would move, and now post snap the front would be under. So that's blood to me is a stunt. So now, I mean, if you're playing him in a heavy 5 and allowing him to get reached and play the B gap, yeah. So I mean that technique, that Jimmy Pony, or the way Alabama plays it in their terminology, I've heard it called a couple different ways, but yeah. So if you're playing him heavier in a 5 and saying, look, if you get any out blocks or base blocks, you can win inside. If you get any down blocks, you've got to come hard and spill. That's the easiest way to probably play that technique with a kid that doesn't play it a bunch. As long as the guys behind it know that on base theories, they're going to have to run because the B gap's taken away. It's also a really good way to take some of the RPO gaps away without having to just stun a guy. Now you're getting the best of both worlds. If you're getting base blocks, you can win inside, but if you're getting pass sets, you can still keep the edge. You can treat reach blocks however you want to treat them. If you allow him to get vertical and get reached so you can run behind him, that's probably the best way to play that technique. And you can do the same thing with your 3 technique in an over front because the gap inside of him is open. So I know a lot of people in over fronts that play the 3 technique and the open side 5 technique the same way. So you just got to teach your backers how to fit off that. So because they have a gap open inside of them, they basically become what people would consider 2 gap players in theory. Even though it's not a true 2 gap technique, but so what you're allowing them to do is any base out blocks, you're allowing them to play the interior gap as opposed to the gap they're lined up in because the gap inside of them is open, right? So if I'm the 3 technique with nobody in the A gap, if I want to take on a block and win in the A gap, I can do that as long as my linebackers know how I'm going to beat that block. And it's the same thing with the open side 5 technique. Now, the 5 technique to the 3 technique, he can't do that unless you do it with both of them. And now if they're both on some type of read game that says, hey, if we get base, out block, reach block, you both can go under it. That's the only chance you have because you can't have the 5 going under if the 3 doesn't go under. To the open B gap side, the 5 can do whatever he wants because there's nobody in the B gap. The 3 technique can do whatever he wants because there's nobody in the A gap. So those theories are very sound. They're very good. Got to make sure your linebackers understand the theory because the fit's going to change for them a little bit when they see a base block that changes late because the guy wins inside. So, yeah, I've looked at that also. In the 2x2 world, I certainly see that as a deal. I don't want to change his fits on power counter, which I don't know if it would or not. But in the 2x2 world, that's basically what he does anyways. I think the thing you would have to look at is how we try to play him behind zone read sometimes and get an extra guy on the quarterback. So that'll be a little bit funky with how we fit that. So if I needed him to fit that open A gap, I would have to have some type of tag or call in the system that lets him know there's no stunt on. If you get zone, you got to be the A gap player. Because a lot of times for him, if we're getting full zone with no pullers, I'll let him go behind it and get a hat and a half on the quarterback so the RPO apex guy can hang and not be a quarterback player because we've got 4 eyes and the ball's going to get pulled. But we also fall behind with inside backers. So the biggest thing to me with the middle safety in that system is you got to tie his fits to what your linebackers are doing. You can't have 3 guys running over the top of everything. It's just like if you were playing a 4-3, it would be the same thing. If the front 2 guys run, the backside guy better be there to scrape, plug, cut back. So to me, the 3 high safety stuff becomes within your fits. A lot of the times it becomes similar to a 3 linebacker system to where all 3 of them can't run. They all 3. So we've got to kind of tie what we're doing. So, if we're facing zone read teams and the inside backer is going to fall back, then I'll let the middle safety run front side. If I want the backers to run front side, then the middle safety is going to fit behind. So we have terminology in our system that can change those fits the way we want them, or we can just build it in that week to say the middle safety is going to play behind so the linebackers can run. So that is certainly possible in the 2x2 world. We've also looked at it to where, because our middle safety is a returning player, we've also looked at it to say, hey, look, if we play 4 down, you line up where you need to at middle safety to play what you need to do. So if it's 3x1, line up where you need to line up to play our base 3x1 check. If it's 2x2, line up where you need to play to handle 3 vertical and whatever you have in the run game. If it's, 20 personnel or 11 personnel, you line up where you need to line up to handle what you would handle in our normal tight front. We've looked at it that way too. So still not, I think for me, the easiest route for the fact that it's a changeup, the easiest route to me is stunning the 3 and the 5 technique and knowing that the A and the B gap are always going to be taken away by movement. If I don't stunt the 3 and the 5, I'll stunt the 1 and the 3 with the torch that everybody runs. So wherever the center blocks, that guy's going to hump over the top and the other guy's going to pin the hip of the center. That muddies the A gap up a bunch. So middle safety doesn't have to worry about closing that. But you definitely need, if you play a base over front with 3 high, you need an A gap answer on certain runs. And as long as that's not different for the middle safety, if he's that A gap guy, then I don't think that changes much. I don't really know, Coach V, if there's an answer. If I'm an overfront team, we're spilling the shit out of every power counter. We're making it go 1 gap wider, and then we're trying to add numbers. So, if I'm an over team playing 8-man fronts, we're going to try and spill the first puller, get a backer and a safety in position to take on the second puller, and now be 2 for 1 on the second puller and the ball carrier, right? So we're always trying to get a number or an added number. For us in the 3 high world, if you're running power to the strong side where the SAM is, he now becomes the force player. So he's got to be a little bit tighter to the equation. He doesn't have to worry about 2 to the flat. So he's out of that deal. So now a lot of times he's going to be the guy they kick with the fullback because they're going to down block the 4-eye. So we got to play our SAM a little bit tighter. So when he gets kicked, the Mike becomes a spill player, and we try to spill the ball to the middle safety. So usually they can't get to the Mike because they're trying to work backside to the will. In order for them to double the nose, they've got to leave the guard on the 4-eye and pull the tackle when teams run power against the tight front. Otherwise, if you see all back blocks, that means they're never going to get to the linebacker level. So, like if you see, like a lot of times if we play counter teams, you'll see the center back on the 4-eye, the guard down on the nose, and the front side tackle. If they're running GT and using the guard tackle backside as pullers, the center goes back to the 4-eye, the guard goes to the nose, tackle blocks the 4-eye. Well, there's all solo blocks on our 3 down linemen. So now what we've got to understand is nobody can get to the second level. So the 2 backers better add themselves to the equation so that we can get an extra number. Because now because we can't spill a puller, they're going to get 2 pullers around the corner. So the issue for us in tight front is like when teams are running GT or counter weak, if they can get 2 pullers on the will and the safety, that's the down support player, our numbers aren't very good. So the Mike or the middle safety had better run over the top of all that. And then you choose which one. If the Mike's going to run like hell, well, the middle safety better play behind him. If the Mike is going to plug, then let the middle safety run because you're going to need a third guy if 2 pullers get around the corner. If you're playing base over stuff and you spill, they can't get 2 can they base block the 5 and try and turn 2 pullers up in a B gap? Yeah, I've seen that done before. But most of the time, if it's a gap scheme, if they down block and the 5 spills, 1 puller is done. You're making the second puller go a gap wider, and now you're sending the ball to 2 players. That's just standard run fits of how you would fit. To me, any 8-man front or doesn't matter whether it was 3-3 stack, 4-4 defense, or any 8-man front you're going to fit. That's probably the way you're going to fit it. So the only issue we have with really good GT teams can give us an issue when they get 2 pullers and we don't equate the numbers because we can't spill one. So getting into over front allows us to spill. So if we're getting a ton of that, we'll jump into over front. Getting into min front discourages anybody from running counter that way because now they've got to kick the Mike coming off the weak side edge. If they run counter away from the Mike and the Mike is free off the edge, they got to figure out how to either read him or slow him down because he's free off the edge. So, but those, again, getting back to the base root of the conversation from the whole thing started now that we're 2 hours in, that's the beauty of football season starting. Those are all the answers I've got to come up with. So if we're getting hurt with power counter and tight front, we've got to be able to change fronts. If we're getting hurt in certain coverages, we've got to be able to change coverages. If we're getting hurt with a light box, we've got to add numbers to the box. That's why we do what we do. That's what the beauty of it is. And starting Monday, that's the world I'm in again. So hopefully during the season, I'll be able to do a couple of these YouTube lives. I would love to check in with everybody, see how your season's going. Any 2 removed, 11, 20, or 10. All right. So the first question, Baz, the only time we won't have 2 backers in the box is if it's 2x2, 10 personnel. So if it's 2x2, 10 personnel, we become a 3-1 box. Every other scenario, and this is why we do it. I'm glad you brought that up. Every other scenario presents a 3-2 box with tight front. Mike and the Will become A to C gap players. And it really is as simple. If the back's to me, I fall back C. If the back's away, I play the A. So it starts off with alignment. If the back's to me, I'm going to fall back C unless I get pullers. If I get pullers, the equation just changes. And now to the side of the pullers, that guy's going C gap and the backside guy's fixing the A gap off the nose. So, that's why we play tight front. That's why we play that box. I think the reads inside are about as simplistic as you can make it. When we get 2x2, we walk the Will. So now the Mike is only really, unless he gets puller, he's an A gap player on all zone runs. Pullers are the only things that he can run to. And then we just got to be careful. If it's 2x2, 10 personnel, you don't get a ton of pullers. But if you're getting like jet power read and stuff like that, now you got to be careful if one of those A gaps gets left alone. But so hopefully that answers that question. Yes. Other than 10 personnel, 2x2, if it's trips, we're in a 3-2 box. If it's 20 personnel, 2 remove, we're in a 3-2 box. The only thing that gets us out of a 3-2 box is 2x2 open. We're moving to a 3-4 base with 2 read on the back end. I have a stud outside backer who can play safety. Am I crazy to play 2 read rules with where? So the outside backer would be playing where to try and play 2 read? Are you thinking about man in the corner on 1 and playing 2 read with the outside backer outside of 2 and a safety? So now the outside backer and the safety, you'd now be treating number 2 technically as number 1 and your outside backer is the corner playing palms. Is that what you're saying? Okay, so he gets trips and you're saying he's more of a – all right, so he gets – all right, so if you think he's more of a safety, then yes, you 100% can – that's the way we play 3x1 base every day of the week. So if we get 3-by-1, our base check, we're going to man up number 1. My 2 safeties are going to play palms off of 2 and 3. My Sam linebackers, you too, Baz. Thank you very much. Let me, where are you coaching? I'll get back to you in a second, James. I just want to see it. All right, good. All right, good. Then we won't see you. Ah. Sometimes you got to worry on YouTube Live when guys get information and then they come back and they're like, hey, yeah, coach, I'm at Creekside or I'm at Nice. Oh, shit. You just sat through YouTube Live and I gave all the answers out. It is what it is. They have film anyways, right? So getting back, thank you. I've only been there 1 year. They've done a great job for years, predominantly in offensive school, but we've turned the corner a little bit last year on defense. It's going to be very hard to match that this year for 2 reasons. Personnel reasons, number 1, and number 2, now everybody knows what we do. So that's the argument I get from people all the time. It's like, hey, don't you worry with all the shit you put out on YouTube. I'm like, everybody's got 10 films. Shit, if you coach, you know what the hell I'm playing anyways. You don't need to go on YouTube to see what the fuck I play. I mean, you got 10 films. You know what we do. You know how we do it. I almost never, of everything YouTube, if those are the actual terms we use, you're a little bit mistaken. Part of the problem with doing YouTube videos is I got to make up terms that are bullshit. So like I got to make terms up for what we call blitzes. I did a blitz video one time and I said we use Marvel superheroes. I've never used a Marvel superhero. That's behind the scenes YouTube camera shit. So yeah, the issue is going to be the personnel is not quite the same, and now everybody knows what we do. Everybody knew what I did for years, but now that you tie it with tight 3 high, we're going to get better game plans this year. So, but to go back to James, your question, yes, you would play. You would play your. Now you've got to take one of your inside backers, and they have to be the palms player off the back, so that if you get 4 strong, you got to know who's pushing, who's doing all those deals. So if it's 3-by-1, you're going to be short. Like if it's 3-by-1 and you're playing it that way, and you have an outside backer and a safety on the backside, somebody's wasted to the backside. You're going to need to gain a guy to the backside because you still need somebody inside of number 3 to handle the push of the running back. Because technically, when you take one out of the equation and you play a man-to-man, now you're playing palms off 2 and 3. So the push player becomes the back. So somebody's got to be the guy that pushes if the back goes 4 strong. So for us, it's the Sam. For you in a 3-4 setting, to me in 3-by-1, if you're trying to play that kind of theory, you need to add a backside player over there. So however you want to do it, whether you want to push linebackers that way or however you want to do it, I don't think it's crazy that you have an outside backer that you think can play 2 read. I don't think that's crazy at all. What's crazy is in that scheme, I don't know if you can equate the numbers. Like the thing about 3-4 stuff to 3-by-1 that bother me all the time is if I have a weak side overhang, then I need to take the backside safety and involve him to the trip side because the weak side overhang, unless he's constantly a rusher and the backside safety needs to be over there because the weak side overhang is always a rusher. If you have a weak side overhang that can drop, you don't need a weak side overhang, a corner, and a safety to the side of the single. So you kind of waste a guy. So if you wanted to play that theory into 3-4, you would have to find a way to push people over there. So now what wouldn't be crazy to me if your weak side outside linebacker was a guy that could drop, what wouldn't be crazy to me would be playing your 2 high safeties to the trip side, letting them play 2 read and taking that outside backer, playing him inside of 3 and letting him be the palms player. That to me wouldn't be crazy. That's just like, I thought about doing that, and my terminology was I was going to, on defense, I was going to call it toss. So we're traveling our safeties. So if it's 3-by-1, both safeties are to the same side, right? So toss meant we traveled our safeties. So yeah, crawfish is good shit now. Those low boils are pretty good. Here's what you'll find, Baz, and this is from experience. If this is your first year doing it and nobody knows you're doing it, you're going to be good for about 6 or 7 games. Week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're going to start seeing heavier personnel and a bunch of formations that Dick with tight front 3 high. The good thing is they don't know how to play out of those formations, most of the teams. So they're not very good at what they're doing. So you have a chance to catch up. This next year for you will be the interesting part, and this year for me is the interesting part. How are teams going to attack us from week 1 on? So how teams attack us from week 1 on, and have they developed their offenses to become – now it's also schedule conducive too. Like the teams that we play early on aren't in our district, and they got to win other games to win their district. So if they're game planning us for tight 3 high, I think it takes away from what they're doing in their own district. So I would never scheme a non-district opponent to say that that's what we need to do when that game doesn't have anywhere near as big of an impact as my district games. So my district games and what they run, I'm going to scheme that first before, and then we got to be good enough against everything else. So I do think we're going to see different schemes this year. How much or how multiple, I don't know yet, and I'll let you know during the season. But my theory also was always if I do something on defense that makes you change your offense, I've already won half the battle. So it's just like being a tempo team on offense. If I can get you into certain coverages because we're a tempo team, or if you're a field boundary team and I can get you into certain things by trading people, half the battle's already won. Now I just have to execute. So, if we can get teams to run things that are tight 3 high beaters, now all we need to know is how to fix the tight 3 high beaters. And now we'll just rep the shit out of the things we're seeing that beat tight 3 high. And now they've got to have both answers. So, but again, 2 hours in, I have workouts tomorrow morning. Appreciate all of you guys being here. Some really great conversation tonight. One of our better ones on YouTube Live. Some great comments. These things only work if you make them work. Yeah, we haven't seen Flexbone yet, but I would think there's some really good things that you can do. Thank you, Philly. Good luck at work tomorrow. I know you're not a football guy, so school's not starting for you, I don't think. You're in the real world doing your job. Again, thanks everybody for being here. If you're interested this Thursday night, Matt Lawrence, one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, at a big-time private school on our schedule, Bowles. I've coached against him for 10 years. He played offensive line at Wisconsin. He's going to do a 90-minute presentation on gap run schemes, part of the Zoom clinic deal we've been doing. If you're interested in attending that, email me at Sting, the wrestler, not the singer, 8740 at gmail.com. So if you want to attend that, email me. I'll let you know. It's usually a Venmo deal or a PayPal deal. And then what I do is I record it on Zoom, upload it privately to my YouTube channel, and then everybody that attended. Now, it's really the best if you know what the 8740 stands for. That's the good part. And that's the part we don't let a few people know, but those are only people in the inner circle. So, Thursday night, the Zoom clinic, we've done about 7 or 8 of them. I put it in the chat earlier. I also, if anybody wanted access to those clinics, I sell those on the side. One of the only things I've ever asked people, please, Rock, let me know how you're doing and let me know any adjustments you're making and what you're seeing and what's working and what's not. And if you have any issues, always feel free to reach out. And if I have any issues, I'm going to reach out. So the Zoom clinics, that's like one of the only things I've ever said to people that they could buy. And the only reason I say that is because there's people that have registered to be there live, and I don't want to cheapen their experience because they paid a season pass to be there for all of them. And they've been live at all 7 or 8 clinics, have a chance to ask questions. And all right. So if you scroll all the way to the top of the chat, Coach V, so if you scroll all the way to the beginning, you'll see all the clinics that I've listed, who did them and what the topics were. So any topic you are interested in, email me, tell me the clinics that you want. I'll tell you what it would cost for those clinics. And then we work something out through Cash App. Sorry. Yeah. Do I have Cash? Yeah, I think I do. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, whatever it is, anything social, monetary that everybody's carrying now digitally. And then I'll send you whatever clinics you want. They're YouTube links, so you can watch them as many times as you want. You don't have to worry about asking, like when the guys attend live, I try to ask them, don't worry about screenshots. Don't screenshot a picture. Don't worry about any of that. When you get the link, you can then go back and watch the clinic as many times as you want. So you can pause it, rewind it. So you get to attend the clinic live. If it's clinics we've already done and all those topics at the top and the speakers were listed at the top in this chat, if you want any of those clinics, just let me know which ones you want. And I'll tell you, all right, for that, it's going to be this much. And I'll send you all those links. And then the other thing I don't do is like, yeah, if I send you that link and you have a coaching staff and you give it to everybody on your coaching staff, I don't give a shit. I don't have a way of checking IP addresses. I don't have a way of saying, hey, you bought that, please don't share it. If you buy it and you have the link, feel free to copy and paste and send it to whoever you want on that. It's not that exclusive of a deal. It's just that I had guys that when I originally did this signed up for a season pass and paid money for a season pass to attend every clinic live. And I don't want to cheapen their experience by saying, well, shit, coach, if you were going to give them away, then why did I pay at the beginning? So that's one of the only reasons I do that. So, but again, anyone you want, just email me, sting8740 at gmail.com. Talk to me about any ones you want. We'll work something out. If you want 5 or 6 of them, we'll work something out. If you want one of them, we'll work something out. If you want to be there Thursday, email me, please. We'll work out. It's $10 to be there live. Email me if you want to be there live. You'll get you'll be able to ask questions live. You'll be able to ask questions in the chat, and then you'll get the link as well afterwards. So even if you're there live, you get the link. If you can't be there live and you register, you get the link. So pretty good deal. We've had some pretty good speakers, a lot of different topics. Last week, Jordan Belfiore, who's the defense coordinator at Colgate, did a really neat deal on quarters and how they fix gaps and how they use back or sling fits to change where they want their fitters to be based on RPOs. So this week is the last one before the season starts. I'll probably try and, after the season, I think I'll probably try and get a schedule going and do a year-long off-season deal again. I've just got to do a better job setting a schedule so that I can promote the schedule. But Matt Lawrence will be talking gap schemes, played offensive line at Wisconsin, one of the best offensive line coaches I've ever coached against, gives us absolute fits with it. So 90 minutes of gap scheme stuff on Thursday. If you're interested, email me, sting8740 at gmail.com. Email me if you want any of those previous clinics. Thank you for being here on a Tuesday night. God bless all of you. I hope you're all healthy. When football starts, either send me a message, send me an email, let me know how it's going. I'll try and jump on these YouTube lives. So if we're defensive guys on here together, we can figure out how we're going to stop these guys that spent the whole offseason coming up with new wrinkles. So we're all going to see them. When we see them, we got to band together, stand united, and figure out how to do it. So you're welcome, James. So Coach V, hit me up with anyone you want. Let me know in an email. Everybody else, have a great night. Again, after football, for any of you that are interested in golf, I'm going to try and take over the golf world on YouTube also. So hoping Play Fast football is not going anywhere. I'm going to hoping to tie Play Fast into Coach Mack on the golf side, but too many guys out there doing too many things in the golf world that I think I can do. So I am going to take that venture on while still doing YouTube Play Fast stuff. So if you're in the golf world, get ready for that, because I'm going full bore trying to take that on as well. So a lot of neat things going on. Thanks for being here tonight. Hopefully we'll do, maybe we'll do one next week during camp, and I'll let you know where my stress is and where my angst is during camp. But appreciate everything you guys do. Should be a video out tomorrow on handling two to the flat and some different ways in how you can describe that to players when it's the corner that has two to the flat, the backer that has two to the flat, the safety that has two to the flat, trying to build that terminology in and how it affects all your other run fits. So should be able to do that video tomorrow after our practice in the morning. So look for that on the channel tomorrow. Remember, you won't play well till you play fast. Thank you. See you next time.